Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Beyond the Loss with myself, Aditi Leverage, who is the founder of the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Support Center. And we are joined today again by Danyelle Kaluski, who is the center's vice chair and director of operations. So thanks again, Danyelle, for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about today's subject.
Yeah, me too. It feels like nighttime. That's probably why you said that. I feel like during COVID, there's just no time. Like time is such a blur, and I feel like that's relevant. Even I remember when I was like first in my initial grief. Also, time was meaningless. I didn't know day or night, and I feel like that's how 2020 has felt for me, anyways. So today we're actually going to just chat a little bit about like grief and the holidays and what it all means through COVID and kind of creating those boundaries around ourselves during COVID and our grief that I think no matter if you're just recently experienced loss or if you're like you and me who are like 8-9 years from the loss, holidays I think are always a trigger. And COVID, of course, is creating maybe a good thing with the boundaries of maybe not having to be around certain family members, but I think that you'll still probably be engaging with family and things like that. So I think right now is a good time to chat about how to nurture the feelings that are coming up around this time and maybe those more complex emotions because of COVID as well. So I know, Danyelle, you have been a bereaved parent for how long has it been now? 9 years?
Yeah, it'll be 9 years in February that I've been a bereaved parent. So going into our 9th holiday season. And I went into our first holiday season with ideas of how it was going to go, and then got super overwhelmed, shut down. I was staying with friends. They didn't know what to do. Nobody knew what to do. And I was just a disaster.
Yeah.
And then that continued to happen for many years. And it's only been, I would say, in the last 3 years that I feel like I've finally gotten a hold of grief through the holidays. I'm not an expert. It's not easier for me, but I know kind of what my own triggers are. And not just knowing my triggers, but knowing when to say yes and when to say no, and when to say, I know I said yes, but I'm changing my mind right now.
Yeah, that's huge. I think that, yeah, that's so huge. So I would love if you could share a little bit more, because I think that that is something that we can, all of us who've experienced grief can relate to, of that the first holiday season, and then those first few years after that, of just feeling like, I don't know the description, but like just feeling like the holidays are happening to you versus you being an active part of the holiday season, knowing that you're carrying the grief and you can carry the grief, and you can carry the joy of the holiday season together, but it takes active and intentional work on our part to show up in that space in that way.
You're bang on there. It does take active work. So going into the first holiday season, I personally felt that I knew it all. I was going to make sure all the traditions that my daughter, my older daughter, had experienced, we would continue. We were spending the Christmas holidays with good friends of ours who had been very supportive through our whole journey of loss, and had opened their home to us. But what I found is it was so busy because we were in somebody else's place, we were visiting, we were chatting, and I quickly became overwhelmed with the situation, and I was going to places and just wishing I was not there. And that doesn't make a good experience for my partner. It doesn't make a good experience for the people around me, as well as it doesn't make a good experience for myself. Because I was not enjoying where I was. I was just wishing I could be somewhere else. Yeah. So, and that happened for years. Like for years, we would travel for holidays because I thought being at home would be the worst place. Being at home would be so hard, and it would be so obvious that there was grief. So I shouldn't be at home. that for me was 100% incorrect. What I have found over the years is I need to be in my home. I need to be able to control who and when I see them so that I can manage my emotions. And if I'm having a really hard grief day, can say, I'm sorry, my family is coming. I am not.
Mhm.
And those that know me and love me understand that. Those that maybe don't understand it, they've either had to learn to understand it, or we don't connect with them over the holidays, and I will connect with them another time when I can manage it.
Mhm. And I think that's the thing, is that there's so much fear around like relationships changing when we set those boundaries, right? Like when we say, actually, I've changed my mind, or this is what I need because I'm having a harder grief day, right? I think that we get scared to say those things or put those boundaries up because we don't want to offend other people, and we don't want those relationships to change. But grief, like if we don't do that, we're offending ourselves, like really. And the relationship that we have with self and the relationship we have with our children who are no longer here also gets affected. So we have to kind of have to find that balance of, where is our first priority? Is it in these other people that are actually not involved in my life? And if they can't hold that space for me during really tough seasons, then where is their value in my life? Or am I the priority here and my immediate family? Because if you can't show up wholeheartedly in those spaces, like your living children are not getting the best of you either.
100%. And my living child wasn't. There were so she was 7, the first 2 Christmases, I wasn't showing up. I was doing what I had to do to make it through. And then I had another child. And again, we traveled when she was 6 weeks old, who thought that was a good idea, and stayed with other like friends again who were super supportive, but you're going through tons of hormones and tons of grief. And again, I just shut down again and again. And I'm very thankful that the friends that we stayed with are still friends to this day, and they still understand that I have good moments and I have bad moments, and they take me where I am at that moment. And I have been able to explain more of my journey as I've gone along, but it's taken years because nobody told me it was okay to say no. It was
Yes.
okay to stay in my house with just my 3 or 4 people and be okay with what happens. It's okay not to be happy. It's okay. And so I look at the holidays as not necessarily finding the joy for me, but I look for the peace in the holidays. For me, if I can be peaceful within, then the holidays are made.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And peace looks differently for each one of us. But for me, just knowing that I don't feel that overwhelming anxiousness every single time we have to go to an event or we have to do something, or Christmas Eve, when I know it's just us. And if I end up feeding them cereal for dinner, nobody's going to have a big fit about it.
No,
They'll actually probably be happy.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably gonna be happy. And I like that it's like giving permission, right? Like you're like, it's okay, and it's okay to change your mind. I think that's the biggest thing. I think sometimes when we in the moment, an invite comes in, especially over the holidays, an invite comes in and we automatically maybe you're like, yes. And then after it starts to get there, if it's creating that anxiety and you're realizing that it's not feeling well in your body to still attend, everybody has the right to change their mind. Right. And I think it's such a powerful lesson to teach our living children and our partners too, that like we do have the right to change our mind. Just because I said yes then doesn't mean that I need to follow suit when it is clearly not the right decision for me now in this moment at this time.
Yeah. And sometimes the situations look like, I don't want to bake this year. It's COVID and I don't want to bake this year. I don't know what it is this year. I don't want to bake. And so I have given myself permission just to order the darn cookies. And if my kids, because my oldest is more than capable of working an oven, wants to bake, I will make sure the items are there, but it's not going to be me. I'm not making 200 items and giving them out this year. It's not what feels good to me. So I'm okay with saying, here's my credit card, just buy the cookies.
Yeah, I'm with you this year too. For me, something about it, like we're gonna do the Christmas baking, but for me, we always host like Christmas Eve dinner. Obviously this year we're not hosting many people outside, like it's just my immediate family. But even that, like we cook and we spend all day cooking, and I was like, I am exhausted. I'm like, I just don't want to cook. And so I actually said, like, I think I'm gonna order a pre-cooked like Christmas Eve. And you know what? Who cares? It makes it feel less like anxiety for me. I will enjoy my day more and my family will be fed. So for me, I'm like, it's a win-win, right? So we can keep those traditions, but as long as it's feeling, like you said, peaceful for us. I think that that's like super important, that we're not pushing to do things because I think that's a big part of it, especially around the holidays. We don't want to stop the traditions or to make, a joyous season feel sad. So we want those traditions and those things to continue, but it can't be at the expense of our internal like well-being.
100%. It's okay for us to be like, I don't want to do this. I'm with you. I don't want to cook. Normally I cook Christmas Eve dinner and I cook Christmas Day. And now I'm like, I don't want to cook any of these. And when I ask my children and my partner what they want, they're like, I don't know, we could do breakfast, we could do this. And I realized that we can make our meals whatever we want them to. So whether we're buying them, whether we're making and eating cereal, whatever that looks like, we can make our own quote new tradition.
Yeah.
And really the tradition is that we're connecting as a group. So what we're eating, does it really matter? And if something really matters, then you can find a way to incorporate that piece into it, right?
Incorporate it. Yeah, exactly. Oh, my Cortana started listening to me. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so what I was gonna say this week, I had this analogy that came up in one of my client sessions, and it was about so my clients had said that they feel like there's like a sword in their chest, and to them this holiday season for them meant pulling that sword out, because that's what strength is, pulling that sword out and like moving on as if there's nothing there, right? Which sounds like that's sort of what you did initially, right? Like, let's not be at home, let's be busy, let's go to other people's houses, let's not actually speak about this sword that's in my chest. And so we chatted about that, and I really am like, like for me, strength isn't pulling out a sword. Strength is letting that sword be there and tend to it and nurture it and allowing the people around you to see it, right? And to create spaces where that sword can exist within you, and to realize that this sword is here and we're not, like, it's a part of my reality now. So I'm not going to cover it up. I'm not going to like I'm not going to do things. Now we're going to find a new way in which I can move through this world with the sword there. Right. And I think that that's sort of like what you're saying that you've learned to do over the last couple of years is go, hey, there is a sword there. There's a pain, there's a wound here. I have grief. I am always going to forever have grief. But instead of being, taking it out and pretending it's not there, I'm going to let everyone know it's here, because this is my life. Right. That our children that don't, like, Emelina's not with you physically, but she's always with you.
That's right. And when I don't honor that sword that's sitting on my chest, and I take it out and I walk, 2 feet, and guess what? I end up collapsing because it's too much. That's when I always say I shut down. When I shut down, it pretty much is that I don't want any part of what we're doing. I become very angry. I become very frustrated, and I don't become present. And when I'm not present, everybody is impacted. If I'm at somebody's house and I am sitting there angry and frustrated, I'm not present with them. And so I'm not honoring their time, and I'm not honoring myself. So I've really learned that by taking that quote sword and like saying it's here, this is how I'm feeling today, that I can have better connections with people.
Yeah, because again, you said you felt angry, and like you've heard me say before, anger is a sound that pain makes, right? So when we're taking that sword out and presenting ourselves like it's not, nothing's happening, that is when we're feeling angry, because we're not addressing the pain. When we allow the sword to be there and exist, we have no choice but to address that pain. And when we're addressing the pain, it's inevitable that that anger is going to decrease. So I think that's a really important thing that you shared.
Yeah, I never knew it. I would get super overwhelmed. I would get very angry. And I'll be honest, it was one of the last trips we took to BC to visit my sisters and my in-laws. It was, I think this would be third Christmas that we haven't done that. And that Christmas, we were loading up a trailer with all this stuff to take out, all these gifts. And all I wanted to do was sit in my bed and pull the covers over my head and not move. We were late leaving. We were supposed to leave on a Thursday. We didn't leave till Friday. The whole time I was a miserable person to my children and to my husband. And why? My sisters and I were fighting over the holidays because they wanted to do XYZ and I didn't want to do that. And we couldn't come to any sort of agreement. And it wasn't an enjoyable trip. It was actually a horrible trip for 90% of the time we were there, because I didn't want to be there from the time I left my house to the time we got home. So who wanted to be around me? Not my family, and not myself.
Yeah, I was going to say you probably had a hard time being around yourself at that point too. And then there's a lot of guilt and shame, I think, when we do that, right? When we put ourselves in positions that are not having the best versions of ourselves show up. I think there's a lot of guilt and shame that we carry then, right, around that. So what shifted then for you? So you said that happened 3 years ago. So in the 3 years since, what are some of the boundaries you've placed now so that you are at peace or feel more peaceful?
So that was it. So we were supposed to say, so with that trip, we were supposed to say a few days later. I pulled the plug on the trip. We came home early. And through that next year, I really started to figure out what I wanted and then have that conversation with my partner. So what I wanted to not feel overwhelmingly stressed about getting the gifts and doing XYZ and all these commitments. I wanted us to just sit in our home and wear pajamas and not get out of, for 2 days straight. And I just wanted us to enjoy what we had in front of us. And so setting that boundary. So some of the boundaries that we have set since that point is we spend the 24th and 25th in our home. So if COVID hadn't been here this year, we were going to leave on the 18th of December, spend time with our family in BC, and be home on December 23rd. So that our kids would wake up in their bed. My partner and I would wake up in our bed and just spend the holidays around our own Christmas tree in our home, so that if nobody wanted to get up until 8, or if we wanted to eat breakfast for dinner, it doesn't matter. We can just control what that looks like, as well as we allowed ourselves to understand that our families weren't going to understand this. So my partner's family doesn't agree with the fact that we spend the 24th and 25th at home, because the 24th is a very important part of their religion and their culture and their family. We did it for, I don't know, 15 years. We spent Christmas Eve with them. It's just no longer an option. So we have to be okay with the fact that there would be criticism, there would be comments, but we would be better as a family unit, and that to us was the most important piece.
Absolutely. And so, and then it gives you space too when you're in your own house. So when those grief waves hit, you don't have to feel guilty if you need to excuse yourself, or if you need to cry, or if you need to go back into bed and pull those covers up. Because with the joy of the holiday season, when you are a bereaved parent, there is always going to be grief that exists in that space. As you watch your living children unwrap their gifts, you are always going to be reminded that there is somebody missing around your tree. So I think that's a beautiful thing, to be able to give yourself permission again to say, I understand that you don't agree with our decision, but this is the best decision, not only for us as a family, but like for you and your own grieving process.
That's right. And I always, with us being home on the 24th and 25th, my husband and I always spend the 24th together connecting. We go and we run and pick up last minute items for dinner or something. So we are able to kind of pull time apart for just both of us to talk about where we're at, how we're feeling. Should we do the big dinner tonight? Should we, feed our kids McDonald's? What does that look like? And then every Christmas day since that moment, I have been able to sit back and sit in my room or sit in front of the Christmas tree and just be by myself. Because if my kids are at home, they're comfortable, they're safe, they're playing with their new items, or now that I have a teenager, they're watching their own TV shows, so that I can center myself. And we do things like we puzzle all through the holidays. We have multiple large puzzles going through where we can just sit and like kind of lean into the grief, because we have that time where I'm not talking to my husband, I'm focused on a puzzle, and yet I still feel like I'm dealing with the grief, because it's like that piece of care for myself.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. And do you have ways that you could maybe share for people that are watching, of how you carry Emelina? Like, how do you, because I say to my clients, when we lose our children, our relationship with that child doesn't end. You still have a relationship with Emelina today in the present moment. And so it's really important to nurture that relationship. And so I'm just curious how you connect or include Emelina in the holiday season, if you do, or what you've tried in the past or what you do currently.
Well, that's a great question, because it's one that I'm happy to talk about. So the first thing that we've done since day one is Emelina is included in our Christmas card. We do it differently than other people do, but we always include a picture and a quote that stood out to me that year to honor her, so that she's always part of our Christmas card, so everybody knows. So whether you're new to my life or whether you've been with us for the last 9 years, you're going to know that we had a daughter.
Yeah, I love that. You gave me that Christmas card last year, and it made me cry as soon as I saw it. It was just so beautiful. I loved that, and I think that's such a beautiful way of honoring your family in its entirety.
That's right. And so that's the first part. That's how we begin to honor her through the season. Emelina has her own stocking, and her stocking has been, some years we've used her stocking to fill it with all the kindness and the good deeds we've done in her honor. Sometimes we'll put those in. Now our youngest, who's 6, puts an elf that has Emelina's name in it and some other toys that she thinks Emelina would want to play with in that stocking. So we really allow our children to be part of remembering their sister and honoring her sister. So that, like I said, so right now there's an elf in there, there's some other toys in there. And then we always do some good deeds throughout the month of December in Emelina's honor. So whether that is sending a gift card to somebody that really needs a pick-me-up, or it is donating toys at her age level to the different organizations. This year we chose Magic of Christmas. And what we found is that as our kids are getting older, our living ones, they also want to pick things that they're kids their age would want to play with. So we do a variety. We do gifts for teens, we do gifts for 6-year-olds, we do gifts for what we think an 8 to 9-year-old would want to play with. And then we donate those. So we're still including Emelina in our gift giving, just a different way. So that somebody else who may not get Christmas will get those gifts that we would normally have purchased for her.
Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. Just so beautiful. I love the card. I think that these are just some ways to make sure that your heart knows that Emelina is still very much part of your family, and it sends that very tangible signal to those around you as well, which I think is really important, because oftentimes holiday seasons, people don't include our children who are no longer here, and that can feel really, really awful. It actually pushes that sword deeper into your chest, and it can feel awful. So that's kind of doing it to make sure other people, it's like setting a boundary and expectation, really, that, hey, this is our life, this is our reality, and we're not going to hide it. With that, though, I want to ask you, how do you handle those people that are just, whether it's family members, friends, whatever, that are just super uncomfortable with that? Because I know that those people are out there, unfortunately. And how have you dealt with them if you have crossed paths with those?
We are very blessed in that my family honors Emelina extremely well, and they're very thoughtful and very supportive. My in-laws, or my partner's family, is a little bit different. They came from a different country, they have a different culture, they have a different religion. And so setting the boundaries with them has actually been the hardest piece of this. It's not that they don't think of Emelina as their grandchild, but in their mind, Emelina has passed. So why do we need pictures? Why do we need them on the back of the card? Why do you need ornaments every year on the tree with their initial or an angel? Or why do you need that picture of her on the tree like you do your other kids?
Yeah.
And they're respectful in the aspect that they don't necessarily ask me those questions, but they ask my partner those questions. Mm-hmm. And the way we look at this is that we are very clear that this is how we're dealing with not only our grief, but this is how we're honoring our child.
Yeah.
And if it makes you uncomfortable, you're more than welcome not to come to our home. Yeah. Because our home is a comfort for us. Mm-hmm. And it sounds very harsh when you say, well, then don't come over. But I've had to set that boundary. When I go to their house, I don't ask them to, decorate their tree our way. I don't ask them to, let's say a prayer for her. I respect what they ask. But in my home, we're going to do it. So there is a tradition in the Polish culture that says that you should always set an extra place at the table for a stranger who may come and join you. And in some other cultures, you set an extra place for those that have passed. Yeah. So depending on the year, depending on where we are, what that includes, usually there's an extra place set at the table for that, quote, stranger or loved one who's passed. And it's a way to honor them. Sometimes, I'll be honest, it's not possible. Our table's full. So that table, that place setting might look like it could be in the living room, it could be in my kitchen. But usually there is something to kind of recognize that loved one, because yes, my daughter has passed. I also have had my sister's partner pass. I've got grandparents pass. So we still remember them. So we also include that memory as Emelina as well.
Yes, I love that. And of course, you and I are getting messages because our work is at the center is always happening. But I love that. For me too, it was, it's, setting those like really firm boundaries. I loved what you said. When I go into other people's homes, I do not tell them how to do things. And it's about setting that boundary very firmly for you and your family, that, hey, this is how we are choosing to move through this experience. This is what our lives look like now. And if you are uncomfortable with it, you don't have to come. But if you are coming, realize that I'm not going to be changing. We are not going to be changing how we do things to appease you. Again, right? We're not going to stay silent so that you're comfortable, right? It's that
100%.
same notion. So I totally agree with that. And now COVID, of course, is going to, I think, it could complicate things a little bit, or it could actually make things easier in terms of these boundaries, because family's not generally going to be coming over. So that kind of alleviates some of that. But I think even the tips that you've shared here today are relevant, even like if you're seeing family over Zoom. One question before we kind of end today that I'd like to ask you, well, two questions. So one is, how do you address the family members that go out of their way, like let's say to not include Emelina in holiday cards or things like that? Do you address it or do you let it go?
I'll be honest, I'm pretty relaxed because Emelina is our daughter. And I get to parent Emelina the way I want to parent her. We have a lot of people in our family or friends who come in and out of our lives who don't always remember because they're not part of the everyday piece. And for me, I don't even take a second glance at it. A lot of our friends are of the same belief where we put the parent's name and then we put and family. We don't necessarily write cards that say to Danyelle, Marios, XYZ. They just write Danyelle, Marios, and family. So that is one way that I can also support other people with their children, because there are losses that happen that maybe I don't know. So for me, I just write and family. A lot of our friends do the exact same thing. I really try to understand that other people have not experienced loss the way I have. And it's for me to carry on the memory, not for them. And so if her name is not on the card, for me personally, that's okay.
I love that, because I think that also releases some of that anger, right? Because I think if we put that on other people, of course, it's lovely when we do have that person that does include them. But if we put it on other people, it's not doing anything to them. It's taking away your peace, which is what you said was the most important thing for you during the holiday season. So I love that.
And most people, they're not, for me, for our community, they don't do it maliciously.
No,
it's not second nature to them. And that's totally okay.
Okay, my last question for today for you is, as we are going into the holiday season and we're COVID, what is one piece of advice that you would give a family that are either new in the grieving journey or at the point where you were 3 years ago, where they realized, okay, something here needs to change? What would your advice be to them?
It's going to be, I'm going to say the advice I'm about to give is going to be really hard, but you have to lean into it. You have to lean into when you're having that really angry moment of why you're having it. For me, I was always like, it's because it's stress. It's because of this. But when I really leaned into it and really dug hard, it was because I was missing my daughter.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to miss my daughter, how would I want my living children or my partner or my sisters or my nieces, how would I want them to lean into their loss? I would want them to throw up their hands and say, this isn't working. This is what I need. And so when I threw up my hands and said, this isn't working, this is what I need, I think my sisters specifically were like, yes, now we have something tangible. Yes, I'm not going to call my sister on Christmas Day. I'm going to call her on Boxing Day, and we'll connect then. Because we always say it's not a holiday for us, it's a holiday season. So for example, they know that if they really want to connect with me, to contact me on the 23rd, the 26th, whenever. So it also provides them a little bit of space to also be like, yes, you know what, I'm going to focus on these people in this house and not worry about calling 25 people or sending 25 text messages. I'll either do that the day before or I'll do that the day after.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great advice. Again, it goes back to like, let's not pretend the sword isn't there. Yeah. Let's lean into it, and let's allow our new reality to exist even through a joyous holiday season, it's still there, and you're the only way through is to actually tend to it.
Yeah, don't
100%
take it out and walk, because you're just gonna fall and you're gonna
bleed out, you're gonna collapse. Yep.
Like
100%.
Just lean into it. It's gonna be hard, it's gonna be uncomfortable. I find though that once we get through that uncomfortable stage, you're like coming down the other side, and I find I can actually see the season for what it is. I've also decided that I don't necessarily need to have joy in the season, but I can have other things.
Yeah.
So like we talked about, I can have peace, I can have kindness, and I can have love. And so that's how we do it. We do a lot of kindness activities. We do, we love on those people around us. And when we find the peace.
Yeah. And it sounds like you have, and it sounds like you have connection and intention as well. I think those are things that you definitely have integrated. So yeah, absolutely. It's redefining what the season means to you now that you are a bereaved parent. And I think that we all need to do that work, like we said at the very beginning, right? It's not about just letting the holidays happen and now you're here. It's actually being intentional and saying, okay, now that this sword is here, what can we actually do? What is the work that needs to be done, rather than ignoring it? And I think that you, again, you're not saying you're perfect at it, and it's, but I think that is a really good first step and a really, really good advice. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you for letting me share it, because like I said, it's cultivated over almost 9 holidays, and, COVID is allowing me to, dig in even more and be at home even more. But outside is still available to me. So we can find other ways to kind of find some peace in the season.
Absolutely. Absolutely, we can. So we're going to have you back for our third kind of holiday conversation, because like I said, we just have really good conversations, and I feel like our community can benefit from hearing this, and especially like from people that are maybe further into the journey to share some tips and ideas and thoughts. So next week we're going to chat about kind of taking care of ourselves during the holiday season in the time of COVID specifically, because COVID is obviously creating some interesting things for everybody. And so like, how do we actually care for our already grieving hearts during this complex season, and now adding the complexity of the COVID restrictions on top of that. So that's what we'll chat about next week. Thank you for tuning in today to Beyond the Loss. Thank you, Danyelle, for sharing. I always feel so honored to have these conversations with you. Remember, if you are listening or watching, I guess it's watching now. If you're watching, please like and share so that these conversations can reach those who need it most. That is our goal. So thank you for joining both Danyelle and I. We hope that you all stay safe and healthy, and we will talk to you all next week.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.